French President Macron started his three-day China visit in the ancient imperial capital of Xi'an. Thousands of years ago, this city was the starting point of the Silk Road trading routes. Fast forward to 2018, and it's here that Macron chose to catapult European and China trade relations once again.
Je suis donc venu dire à la Chine.
So I've come here to tell China of my determination for the Europe-China partnership to enter the 21st century. For it to be part of this new grammar that we have to define together, Europe will decidedly commit to this strategy because it is now aware of its role and its position in this new century.
Dans le siècle qui commence.
Visiting Xi'an was also a gesture to Chinese President Xi Jinping's Silk Road Revival Plan. It's known as China's One Belt, One Road project and is estimated to cost $1 trillion. The initiative is set to revive the ancient Silk Road that once carried fabrics, spices and a myriad of other goods in both directions. The plan will see new road and rail networks built throughout Central Asia and beyond. It will also include new maritime routes stretching throughout the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. And these are routes that Macron wants Europe to be part of.
Je suis en train simplement de dire que
I'm simply saying that in an inherent way, these roads can only be shared. If they are roads, they cannot be one way. There must be comings and goings.
elles ne peuvent être univoques.
President Macron also has his eye on Silk air routes. There are reports that Airbus could sell at least 100 planes to China. The game changer would be the sale of Airbus A380 Super Jumbos that are struggling to find buyers. Airbus is reportedly offering China an industrial partnership if Beijing places orders for its biggest passenger jet. Airbus shares jumped nearly 1% on the news. On climate change, President Macron said he would talk to President Xi about relaunching the climate battle. Cooperation, he said, would show the world that the French and the Chinese are capable of making our planet great and beautiful again. For France, as for the EU, making the trade relationship with China more balanced and fair would help to narrow deficits. In Macron's case, that deficit amounts to some $36 billion, France's largest bilateral trade shortfall. And that will be at the forefront of his three-day China visit. Maria Ramos, TRT World.
And joining us from Paris is our editor-at-large, Craig Copetas. Welcome, Craig. Now, listen, before we go on, we've got some pictures of Emmanuel Macron trying to learn a little bit of Mandarin ahead of his meeting with Xi Jinping. Let's have a little listen.
Sois grande. Jean Titio, Taite, Weita.
Now, I don't know about you, Craig, but I can't quite imagine Donald Trump doing the same thing ahead of his meeting with Xi Jinping. But look, this is no ordinary state visit, is it, by Macron? Do you think that Macron's visit represents something of a tectonic shift?
The political class here is calling this visit Operation Seduction. And like that beautiful monument behind me here, Macron's not on the ground in China for one day, and they're already calling his visit a triumph, particularly since France woke up this morning looking to America, as it always does, to see what's going on within the Trump administration, to find that the American political class is obsessed with a 2020 presidential race between Oprah Winfrey and Donald Trump. They turned off their sets and they turned their view to China. This is a positive thing for France. Macron has been a positive presence on the global stage, and this trip is going to do nothing but solidify that further.
OK, but Craig, look, there is still a lot of skepticism of China, not just in the US, also in Europe. How is Macron going to silence the Sino-skeptics within France and within Europe?
I think what Macron doesn't have any fear about telling the Chinese about human rights, where Trump does. Europe realizes it has to do business with China in the same manner it realizes it has to do business with Russia. Right now, the world sees disorder in Trump's foreign policy tweets and America's obsession with celebrity while major issues are percolating all around the globe. Now, Macron right now fills that gap nicely. It's part of the cost of globalization, and part of that cost is really what world leaders need to buy into. You know, they need to grasp, I think, to a great extent, President Erdogan's mantra that the world is bigger than five. And Macron's visit to China, even though France sits on the Security Council, is an illustration of that. Macron gets it. China sees France as part of the One Belt, One Road conduit to Europe. And Macron is going to do everything he can to make that a two-way street.
Right. Apart from One Belt, One Road, although this is central to China's economic policies, but what exactly is Xi Jinping looking for in this relationship with France? I mean, the EU is already China's biggest trading partner.
Right. I think, or what I'm hearing, this is just the talk in the political salons here. China has a monstrous problem, Azar. The communists tightly exert control over all cultural and business development, which is why Chinese culture and Chinese business, to a great degree, has virtually zero global appeal when you place it next to that of the United States or even South Korea. China has no traction in the global marketplace of ideas. And I think that Macron, or what I'm hearing, is that Macron can perhaps bring some legitimacy, although, you know, edited legitimacy, to what the Chinese are trying to do. There's something very important going on. You talk about a tectonic shift. The American foreign policy establishment thinks that nobody is capable of leading the world if America is not leading the world. They refuse to believe that. What global leaders like Macron are showing right now, that they can lead the world. They don't need Donald Trump, and they don't need the United States. How that's going to play out over the coming years remains to be seen. But that's what's taking place in this tectonic shift you mentioned.
Do you think, Craig, that Emmanuel Macron may succeed in doing perhaps what generations of American leaders have failed to do, which is to perhaps get China to open up its markets, to become more transparent, to become more cognizant of things like intellectual property, for example? Do you think that there might be a chance that Emmanuel Macron may be able to convince China to do some of those things?
I think the conventional wisdom in the era of Trump is that President Macron has a much better chance of accomplishing that than anyone in Washington, D.C., and certainly better than Donald Trump, who's sycophantic. Macron is not a sycophant. Right. Macron cuts a hard deal. Mm-hmm. Macron is a really tough guy.
Okay. Craig Copetas in Paris, thank you so much.